thing. Why do you think that's sort of not around as much anymore?
It's funny because I was chatting with John from Hustle, Sid Scala,
Sure.
and I put him one of my promos, and he sort of said that at the moment they're looking for a more organic look.
Right.
They've sort of lent towards, like, rather than backstage interviews like how did this go and stuff like that, they tend to sort of do like the fly on the wall style, don't they? Like they around, and then all of a sudden it's the soap opera. This happens, and they try and keep it organic. And then when you get the old interviews, especially like some of my favourites were Randy Savage's interviews.
Yeah,
I mean, when I've done some interviews for you guys as well, and I always try and think of something that's a little bit out there, and people go, "Wait, what?" And for it. And some of the quotes, like he used to come on and he had the little pots of milk, and the cream of the crop, or he'd come out with a little coffee cup and say, this is Tito Montana's cup of coffee in the big time, and he'd a Theme Jean or something like that,
Yeah.
I used to love all that sort of stuff. But it was over the top. They were, back then they were comic book characters. They were cartoon characters, and then obviously it became sort of in the Attitude Era. It was all like grunge. So everything went dark, and then it was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, blah, blah, blah. And then, like I say, times have changed with the audience, and obviously, like you said, things will recycle. And I can see the backstage interviews making a comeback, because some of the stuff, like creatively, you could come up with these backstage interviews, and obviously, like, you can develop yourself a nice little few taglines. The one thing I've always said is you've got to have some sort of catchphrase. And people remember you. So obviously Defrain is, shut up and listen up, because Defrain here, and I'll walk into a room and people will go, shut up, because he's talking, and people are always quoting it. And I think it was Dusty Rhodes said, if they're saying it, it's good. Good. And, I've always thought, you've got to have, like, Stone Cold had a catchphrase, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, The Rock, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, they all had their little catchphrase. And I feel like a lot of it is, like, even John Cena had his catchphrases, like, you can't see me, the champ, all that stuff. Because it's a slogan. You put that on a T-shirt, you've made yourself money.
Yeah.
And again, it's all about the entertainment. And they're going for this more organic thing, which is really big with wrestling fans at the moment. But then obviously they're going to try and draw in the family entertainment side of it. And I think the backstage interviews and the sort of maybe the silly over-the-top interviews might make a comeback. It might not, but, time will tell, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess it's just sort of like tweaking it a little bit, because obviously people that remember the backstage stuff, especially at WrestleManias and Rumbles and things like that, there was a lot of screaming, a lot of shouting. I remember the Earthquake ones, he'd just be sort of like sort of rocking up and down on his toes, on his heels for most of it. And I mean, I guess that was the effect that the managers had back then, because it was a spot for the managers to talk for the wrestlers that maybe weren't that comfortable with the camera shoved in their face, and it was a good opportunity for those guys to sell what was coming. Other than, I'd say, maybe Jake Roberts, who really stood out to me, scared the life out of me, because he was one of the few guys that he could just look into the camera and just melt me down. I mean, I'd be so scared of the bloke, just how he'd comfortably sort of bring that same level of tone. But everything he was saying was so methodical, and the way he delivered his lines was kind of a real art in itself. But for most of the other guys, it was a lot of shouting, a lot of yelling. But as you say, it was kind of of the makeup back then. And I suppose if you're going to do it today, you'd have to probably. I think wrestlers would have to almost go back to really knowing your character inside out to be that comfortable in front of the camera. And because I think that's what worked best back then, and maybe that's why it was so erratic, is because they weren't so overproduced, and they kind of just, I mean, guys back then, they did pretty much live their character on and off screen. So that might be a big part of it as well. I've got to say, like, when we've played your matches on WrestleLine and Turnbuckle TV, your matches, the feedback I get is you always remind a lot of my listeners that the name I get, and I don't know if you've ever had this before, so let me know, but they say you remind them of Sid in your intensity in the ring. Have you ever had that thrown at you before?
What, Sid Vicious?
Sid Vicious, yeah.
Do you know what? I've never had people refer to me as Sid Vicious.
So there you go.
That's another one.
I had at least 6-7 people. Yeah. And they was like, especially with the interviews you've done, they're like, he looks scary. There's something scary about this guy. Like, you can see it in his eyes. And I was asking, they were like, is he always like that? I was like, he's an intense guy. But it really, like, I think when I was watching your matches, is that the style came across that he was quite an intense type wrestler. And I'll make no bones about it here, and I'm not just blowing smoke because you're on my podcast. You can go back and listen to other podcasts I've done. But I've always, since I've gone out on the road away from the podcast, your name I've always praised highly from the first time I saw you, which I think was probably, at a DKW show. And I've always enjoyed watching you in the ring, like your art and the way you deliver stuff, because I'm a little bit of an old school fan, I suppose. But I like wrestling where it's kind of gritty, it's not perfect, and it's kind of a little bit scientific, where you might, if a guy's going to work on a body part, he's going to focus on it, and he's going to, squash the weakness. And I think you bring a lot of that to your matches. Is that something that has always sort of stood the test of time with you since you've gone through all this process? Because there must be times where it's like, because you've gone through a few, different type of generations of wrestling, and of course it's always forever changing. Have you always sort of stayed with those kind of fundamentals in wrestling with your sort of style and the way you display a match?
I mean, it's adapted over time. I mean, when I first sort of started, I still do a lot of the stuff that I did back then. Mm-hmm. Obviously, when I first got in the ring, I was 15, 16 years old. Mm-hmm. So I was a lot smaller. I was a lot faster, so I could do bits and pieces, but I never wanted to be the guy that flips off the top rope. I wasn't a Jeff Hardy. I wasn't a Billy Kidman or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be like Austin. I wanted to be The Rock. I wanted to be Triple H. I wanted to be the player that came in, or Sid Vicious, as you put it. I wanted to be the guy that came in and kicked the living SH.
Yeah, of anyone. You can swear on this one, don't worry.
I wanted to be that guy. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, the Defrain character has been my character since I started. It's adapted over time, but it was always like I drew a lot of inspiration from Bob Hoskins in The Long Good Friday.
Oh, yeah, good film.
That intense.
Yeah.
And as my missus tells me sometimes, is she said, whenever you're angry at someone or you've got the death stare, you've got the stare where it looks like you're just going to rip the planet in half.
Yeah.
And so I try and bring some of that intensity. So I've sort of trained my mind to sort of go, no, like this is my opponent. We're in it to have a row. But I always, when I put the guy down with the intensity, I'm always like, are you okay, mate? I think, half the guys are my friends, they're my buddies, I don't want to see them get hurt, but I've introduced a few more things into my style, which I picked up from some of the newer guys. I do some more of the, Daryl from Knuckle Lock showed me a few things which I really enjoyed that I've started throwing into my matches now. Mm-hmm. Where I wrestle guys like Taylor, Torino, and Vaughan and stuff like that, these guys, they're very new, very modern, where they do the very, like, lots of flashy, not so much high flying, but very flashy style moves, which, I don't, and I see these guys. They do like all these big fancy, like I'm going to twist you here and I'm going to spin you in the air if you land. And then I'll just go, oh hell with this! I put the guy up, I fly him on the ground. Because I'm not the guy that's the flashy guy. I'm the bulldozer. I'm going to come in, I'm going to kill you, and that's what Defrain always was. He's the guy that gets business done.
Yeah.
And I've always tried keeping that in my style and in the way I wrestle. And I've incorporated some new moves, but I try and keep it to that sort of, like you said, organic base of it's not clean, but it's like this guy is intense. He's coming to kill, and. Does it match up with the new style? Who knows? Only time will tell. Some people might go, no, we want to see all the flip stuff. But then it's like anything. With a show, you've got, if you go to the circus, you don't just want to see the acrobats. You want to see the acrobats. You want to see the strong men. You want to see performing artists. You want to see the clowns. You want to see a bit of everything. It's like all sorts. You want a variety, and if everyone's doing the same stuff, there's no variety. It gets boring. You've seen the same guys over and over and over again. So you do. You want to see you guys do your El Ninos, like your kids flipping and jumping and doing these incredible things, but then you want to see your intense guys like me or Damien and that, like really tear things up. Then you want to see like your super heavyweight guys. Come in and do the super strength feats and stuff like that, and then you want to see your silly guys come in and do all the clowning around and that, because it's all, again, it's entertainment. People want to be entertained.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I definitely 100% back up the intense look that you have on your face. You've definitely got it. I would say there's only, like, since I've been doing the interview stuff backstage, there's only two people that I've ever felt like really worried for myself. Was you and probably Paul Robinson. The two, I'm telling you, the intensity on your face is definitely there.
I've got a story with Paul Robinson that made me laugh, and it was so funny. I was at a WrestleFall show, and this is when I had my little video company.
Right.
Oliver Peace, the promoter of WrestleFall, said, I can come help with this show. I said, yeah, I'll come along. And it was Paul Robinson and Damien against, I think it was, I could be wrong, but I think it was against Ollie and who did Ollie used to tag with? I can't remember now, so long ago. I remember Paul had lost the match, and I remember he kept saying, they're pulling my hair. Obviously, he's completely bald. And he did a tantrum, and he walked up the ramp, and he looked at me, and then he kicked me in the back of the head. And then I was like, you just kicked the cameraman. Missing myself. It's so funny. I thought it was brilliant, because I loved it, because it's like, you just see me there, he just kicked me in the back of the head.
Oh, wow.
Like, what? Why do you... Because I know I'm part of it, I'm part of the show, but I just thought it was brilliant. So funny. So, yeah, like, my thumbs up to you on that one, Paul. It had me in stitches, mate.
What a story, yeah. There's only very few people like Paul, I can assure you, still in this game. And it brings me to my next kind of point now with you, and like through your career, like who have been some of the best people that you've enjoyed working with? Like who have been, do you feel you have some really good chemistry with? Has there been certain matches that you thought that person, I want to work with them again immediately, and you feel like really good in the ring with? Who have those people been thus far?
I'll tell you what, the best match I had, and it was so strange because we never trained together. We never worked together in the past. We knew of each other, and that was me against Chris Wilde. Right. And we had a show at Genesis, and we were booked for that show. And again, we'd never worked in the ring together. We'd never been in the ring together. And Chris comes up to me and says, well, how about we do this, we do that? And I said, yeah. And then we got in the ring, and it was the chemistry we had in the ring was just phenomenal. It was one of the how it flowed.